This is our past, gentlemen. This is where we have been. This is how we got here. This is who we are today.
You find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, one half a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us.
It's not about that scoreboard out there. It's not about winning. It's about you and your relationship to yourself and your family and your friends.
They're strong, fast, and undefeated. So far. But I want you to remember where God has brought us. I want you to remember how hard you've worked. We weren't supposed to have a winning season, but we do. We weren't supposed to advance through the playoffs, but we did. We're not supposed to be here, but we are. So if there's anything in you that says this is a losing effort, throw it out. Because as I stand here, I believe that as long as we honor God, nothing is impossible.
Welcome back to Diggin Deeper, everyone. I'm your host, Brian Parsons, and I'm thrilled you've joined us for another edition of Diggin Deeper into the NFL. Here at our ministry, we proudly combine our faith with our love for the game. As a Christian ministry, our foundation is firmly rooted in Christ. But that doesn't mean we shy away from breaking down the grit, grind, and glory of competition, especially in the National Football League. Remember, football is a passion, not our purpose. With that mindset, let's get in the huddle and dig deeper into the NFL. We're talking Week 18, the final week of the 2025 regular season. This week delivered exactly what fans want. Intense, high-stakes matchups, many of them divisional. While some playoff seedings were already locked in, others were still up for grabs, giving players, coaches, and fans all the drama and urgency that late-season football brings. For several teams, every snap carried postseason weight. Quarterbacks were tested under pressure, and for some coaches, Monday meant Black Monday, when pink slips are handed out and coaching futures are decided. Week 18 provided plenty of separate the contenders from the pretenders moments. Today, we'll break down the X's and O's, evaluate execution in key matchups, and take a closer look at why some teams rose to the occasion while others fell short. Notably, this week featured no Thursday night or Monday night games and kicked off on Saturday, January 3rd. Perfect timing for fans to focus entirely on the drama of the final week of the regular season. The stakes were high, the intensity was palpable, and the storylines heading into the playoffs were set. In the first of two Saturday NFL games, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosted the Carolina Panthers at Raymond James Stadium in a matchup loaded with postseason stakes. For Carolina, the scenario was simple. A win would secure the NFC South title and a playoff berth. Tampa Bay also needed a victory to stay alive, though the Buccaneers would still require help elsewhere to reach the postseason. The Panthers, meanwhile, could still clinch the division, even with a loss. On a tense Saturday night in Tampa, the Buccaneers edged the Panthers in a closely fought contest defined by timely defensive stops, ball control, and costly mistakes. With playoff implications looming, Tampa Bay leaned on its ground game and defense to grind out the win, while the Panthers struggled to overcome turnovers and a nearly non-existent rushing attack. Tampa Bay set the tone early with an efficient opening drive, capped by a red zone touchdown pass from Baker Mayfield to tight end Cade Otton. Otton slipped free over the middle to give the Buccaneers an early advantage and establish an offense focused on controlling possession and field position. Carolina responded behind quarterback Bryce Young, who guided multiple scoring drives and connected with Jalen Coker for a touchdown to keep the game tight. A pivotal moment arrived in the second half when the Panthers appeared poised to seize momentum but turned the ball over deep in Buccaneers territory. Tampa Bay made them pay by leaning on the run game, with young star Bucky Irving delivering several physical carries to flip the field and drain the clock. A Buccaneers field goal extended the lead and loomed large in the low-scoring affair. Carolina made one last push late in the game as Young delivered a pair of big throws to Tetairoa McMillan, including a 40-yard completion that sparked the Panthers' sideline. Late in the game, Carolina pulled within two, 16-14, but that's as close as they would get as the Buccaneers made a critical stop. The decisive defensive play occurred in the fourth quarter when the Panthers, threatening to score from the Buccaneers' 20-yard line, fumbled a flea flicker attempt. Linebacker Levante David recovered the loose ball, halting Carolina's momentum and allowing Tampa Bay to protect their narrow lead. The Buccaneers then methodically ran out the clock, sealing the victory by dominating time of possession and limiting Carolina's opportunities. Statistically, Tampa Bay held the edge in several key areas. The Buccaneers recorded 21 first downs to Carolina's 16 and were far more effective on third downs, converting 8 of 15 attempts compared to the Panthers' 1 for 8 performance. Tampa Bay ran 66 plays for 338 total yards, while Carolina totaled 285 yards on 49 plays. The Buccaneers also controlled the ball for 37 minutes and 25 seconds, nearly doubling Carolina's possession time. While Carolina's passing game showed promise, its offense was one-dimensional. Young completed 24 of 35 passes for 266 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, finishing with a 98.0 passer rating and taking no sacks. However, the Panthers managed just 19 rushing yards on 14 carries, averaging 1.4 yards per attempt. Tampa Bay was far more balanced, rushing for 140 yards on 42 carries, while Mayfield completed 16 of 22 passes for 203 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. Irving led Tampa Bay's rushing attack with 85 yards on 26 carries, while Mayfield added 31 yards on the ground. Cade Otton paced the Buccaneers, receiving corps with 7 catches for 94 yards and a touchdown. For Carolina, McMillan led all Panthers receivers with 85 yards, while Coker and Tommy Tremble each hauled in touchdown receptions. Turnovers ultimately told the story. Carolina committed 3 turnovers, including 2 lost fumbles, while Tampa Bay gave the ball away just once. Tampa has accomplished the first step to their playoff berth, a victory, but still needs help from the Saints in Atlanta to secure the NFC South title. In the second Saturday matchup from Santa Clara, California, the Seattle Seahawks and San Francisco 49ers met in a true winner-take-all showdown for the NFC West crown. The stakes could not have been clearer. A Seattle victory would secure the division title, while a San Francisco win would deliver the NFC West championship to the 49ers. Seattle leaned on a balanced offensive approach and a strong rushing performance to control the tempo, while San Francisco struggled to generate explosive plays and committed costly mistakes that shifted momentum and the game as Seattle stood victorious at 13-3. The Seattle Seahawks dominated the stat sheet in their NFC West showdown against the San Francisco 49ers, recording 23 first downs to San Francisco's 9. Seattle's offense was balanced and efficient, generating 11 passing first downs and 10 rushing first downs, while the 49ers relied mostly on the pass for 8 first downs and managed just a single rushing first down. On third down, Seattle converted 6 of 13 attempts compared to San Francisco's 2 of 9, though both teams struggled on fourth down. The Seahawks ran 67 plays for 361 total yards, averaging 5.4 yards per play, while the 49ers managed just 173 yards on 42 plays at 4.1 yards per play. Seattle's passing attack, led by Sam Darnold, completed 20 of 26 passes for 181 yards with no interceptions, while Brock Purdy completed 19 of 27 passes for 120 yards and threw 1 interception. On the ground, Seattle racked up 180 rushing yards on 39 attempts, averaging 4.6 yards per carry, while the 49ers gained 53 yards on 12 carries, averaging 4.4 yards per rush. Neither team scored in the red zone, but Seattle avoided turnovers entirely, whereas San Francisco committed 1 interception. Time of possession heavily favored the Seahawks, who controlled the ball for 37 minutes and 48 seconds compared to the 49ers, 22 minutes and 12 seconds. Allowing Seattle to dominate both the flow and tempo of the game. Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold delivered a steady, efficient outing, completing 20 of 26 passes for 198 yards, while averaging 7.6 yards per attempt. Although he did not throw a touchdown, Darnold protected the football, avoided interceptions, and managed the game effectively despite being sacked twice. His composure allowed Seattle to sustain drives and keep the 49ers defense on the field for extended stretches. On the opposite sideline, Brock Purdy had a difficult afternoon, completing 19 of 27 passes for 127 yards with 1 interception. San Francisco's passing game struggled to stretch the field, averaging just 4.7 yards per attempt, and Purdy was sacked 3 times as Seattle's defense consistently disrupted the pocket. The difference in the game came on the ground, where Seattle dominated. Kenneth Walker III led the Seahawks with 97 rushing yards on 16 carries, while Zach Charbonnet added 74 yards and the game's lone rushing touchdown on 17 attempts. Seattle finished with 180 rushing yards on 39 carries, repeatedly winning at the line of scrimmage and keeping San Francisco's offense off balance. The 49ers, by contrast, managed only 53 rushing yards, with Christian McCaffrey held to 23 yards on 8 carries, as Seattle bottled up San Francisco's normally explosive run game. Seattle's passing attack spread the ball around effectively, led by Jackson Smith and Jigba, who caught 6 passes for 84 yards. Walker and Charbonnet contributed as receivers out of the backfield, while Cooper Kupp chipped in 29 yards on 2 catches. The Seahawks totaled 198 receiving yards, consistently finding openings in short and intermediate routes to move the chains. San Francisco's receivers were limited after the catch, with Juwan Jennings leading the team with 35 yards, followed closely by Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. The 49ers finished with just 127 receiving yards and were unable to generate the explosive plays that have defined their offense throughout the season. As the game wore on, Seattle's ability to control possession and win on the ground proved decisive. The Seahawks methodically closed out the contest by leaning on their rushing attack and forcing San Francisco into long yardage situations. In the end, Seattle's balanced offense, physical running game, and opportunistic defense earned them a critical division victory, while the 49ers were left searching for answers after a rare offensive struggle in a game that carried major NFC West implications. After the game, 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan acknowledged that his team will have to take the hard road forward, and his assessment was accurate. Entering the postseason as a wildcard team means San Francisco will open the playoffs on the road, regardless of the opponent or location. Considering the number of injuries the 49ers endured throughout the season, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, their mere presence in the playoffs is an accomplishment in itself. Given the adversity his team has overcome, this performance may strengthen Shanahan's case as a legitimate candidate for Coach of the Year. The Seattle defense resembled a modern-day version of the original Legion of Boom, smothering the 49ers and preventing them from finding any offensive rhythm. San Francisco struggled to generate momentum throughout the game, and for long stretches it appeared the Seahawks were clearly the superior team. That advantage was magnified by the 49ers' limitations on offense, as they were without key starters Trent Williams and Ricky Pearsall, leaving them unable to counter Seattle's relentless pressure and disciplined coverage. What is clear is that with the victory, the road to the NFC playoffs will run through Seattle. The Seahawks soared when it mattered most, earning the right to rest at the top of the mountain after a dominant performance that confirmed their place among the conference's elite. In a hard-fought AFC South clash, the Indianapolis Colts traveled to Houston to take on their divisional rivals, the Texans, in a game full of intensity and pride. While neither team's playoff positioning was on the line, the matchup carried all the stakes of a true divisional showdown, with each side eager to assert dominance, gain momentum for next season, and claim bragging rights within the division. From the opening kickoff, the game had the feel of a contest that mattered, with both offenses and defenses battling every yard and every play. The Indianapolis Colts and Houston Texans played a tightly contested divisional matchup, with both teams combining for 64 plays each and similar offensive totals. The Colts recorded 19 first downs, including 11 passing and 7 rushing, while the Texans finished with 22 first downs, 9 through the air, and 10 on the ground. Indianapolis was slightly more efficient on third down, converting 8 of 15 attempts compared to Houston's 4 of 13, and the Colts were perfect on their lone fourth down attempt. Both teams moved the ball effectively, as the Colts totaled 354 yards, 278 passing, and 76 rushing, while the Texans gained 339 yards, with 205 through the air and 134 on the ground. Riley Leonard completed 22 of 35 passes for 278 yards and 1 interception, while Houston's quarterbacks combined for 17 completions on 32 attempts for 205 yards without turning the ball over. Indianapolis struggled to find consistency on the ground, averaging just 2.7 yards per carry compared to the Texans, 4.2, though the Colts were able to reach the end zone twice in 4 red zone trips. Houston also managed 2 scores in 3 red zone opportunities, including a defensive or special teams touchdown. Turnovers proved costly for Indianapolis, with 3 total, 2 fumbles and 1 interception, while Houston protected the ball and forced no turnovers. Time of possession slightly favored the Colts at 31 minutes and 45 seconds, giving them just enough control to complement their productive passing game, though the contest remained competitive throughout. Riley Leonard led the Indianapolis Colts offense with a solid performance, completing 22 of 35 passes for 278 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception, while being sacked once for 8 yards. Kicker Rigoberto Sanchez was perfect on his lone field goal attempt, adding 16 yards. On the Houston side, C.J. Stroud started for the Texans and completed 14 of 23 passes for 169 yards and a touchdown with no turnovers, while backup Davis Mills added 36 yards on 3 of 9 passing, leaving Houston with a combined 205 passing yards and 1 touchdown, but no interceptions. The Colts found success on the ground as well, though the rushing attack was spread out among several players. DJ Giddens led with 30 yards on 8 carries. Jonathan Taylor added 26 yards on 14 attempts, and Riley Leonard contributed 21 yards and a touchdown on 3 scrambles. Tyler Goodson, Amir Abdullah, and Josh Downs added smaller gains, combining for 19 more yards, giving Indianapolis 76 total rushing yards. Houston leaned on British Brooks and Woody Marks, who each gained 63 and 48 yards respectively, while Stroud, Mills, Dare Ogunbowale, and Jawhar Jordan contributed to give the Texans 134 rushing yards on the day, including a touchdown from Stroud on a short run. In the receiving game, the Colts spread the ball effectively. Alec Pierce had a huge day, catching 4 passes for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns, including a long of 66 yards. Josh Downs added 61 yards on 4 receptions. Tyler Warren caught 5 passes for 26 yards, and Amir Abdullah chipped in 24 yards on 2 catches. Other contributors included Mo Alley-Cox, Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman Jr., and Riley Leonard, giving Indianapolis a total of 286 receiving yards. Houston's receiving attack was paced by Xavier Hutchinson, who hauled in 5 passes for 84 yards, and tight end Dalton Schultz, who added 73 yards on 4 catches. Jaden Higgins caught a touchdown in a smaller role, while Jalen Noel, Cade Stover, Dare Ogunbowale, Woody Marks, and Christian Kirk accounted for the rest of Houston's 205 receiving yards. Overall, Leonard's combination of passing, rushing, and distribution gave the Colts a balanced offensive attack, while Houston struggled to match the production despite contributions from multiple players. This was a fun and hard-fought matchup, carrying all the intensity of a divisional game that truly mattered. While the Colts were not fighting for playoff positioning, they were playing for pride, momentum heading into next season, and the satisfaction of getting one over a divisional rival. Every snap had a sense of urgency, and both teams left everything on the field, making it a contest that fans could feel mattered from start to finish. All in all, this game was truly fun from beginning to end, and while the ending was a bit controversial, it was an old-fashioned AFC South slugfest, with the Texans coming out on top 38-30. 6 points were added on the last play of the game as Texans defensive tackle Tommy Togiai scored a touchdown on the final play of the regular season by recovering a fumble on a Colts lateral attempt, sealing a 38-30 victory in their 2025-2026 season finale, marking his first NFL touchdown and helping the team secure their 9th straight victory with momentum headed into the playoffs. In a dramatic AFC North season finale at Paycor Stadium, the Cleveland Browns rallied past the Cincinnati Bengals 20-18 in a game that provided both excitement and historical milestones. The contest featured big defensive plays and clutch execution in a matchup that mattered for pride more than playoff positioning. Cleveland struck first on defense when linebacker Devin Bush returned an interception 97 yards for a touchdown, setting the tone early before cornerback Sam Webb added a 47-yard fumble return score to give the Browns a commanding lead. Cincinnati responded with a touchdown pass from Joe Burrow to T. Higgins, keeping the Bengals within striking distance, but missed extra points and critical errors kept the game close. A field goal by Browns kicker Andre Schmidt in the third quarter extended Cleveland's advantage, and though Burrow and wideout Jamar Chase connected for a late touchdown to bring Cincinnati within 1 point, the Browns held on for the 20-18 victory as time expired. The win capped a season of highs and lows for Cleveland, and was highlighted by defensive star Myles Garrett, setting the NFL's single-season sack record with his 23rd takedown. Cleveland's defense dominated, turning turnovers directly into points and keeping the Bengals' offense off the scoreboard for the majority of the game. Cincinnati's offense showed resilience. Burrow finished the game with multiple touchdowns, but key mistakes, including blocked kicks and failed conversions, ultimately proved costly. The Browns' special teams delivered the game's decisive play as Schmidt drilled a 49-yard field goal as time expired, sealing the comeback. The Cleveland Browns were outgained by the Cincinnati Bengals, but made the difference through efficiency and defensive scores. Cleveland finished with just 11 first downs compared to Cincinnati's 24, generating 4 through the air and 6 on the ground, while the Bengals leaned heavily on the passing game, with 16 passing first downs and 8 rushing. The Browns ran 52 plays for 200 total yards, averaging 3.8 yards per play, while Cincinnati totaled 364 yards on 66 plays at 5.5 yards per snap. Cleveland's passing game was limited to 82 yards on 11 of 22 passing, with Sanders taking 6 sacks for 29 yards, while Burrow completed 29 of 39 passes for 222 yards but threw 1 costly interception. On the ground, both teams were productive, with the Browns rushing for 118 yards on 24 carries, and the Bengals gaining 142 yards on 25 attempts. Cincinnati was more effective in the red zone, converting 3 of 4 opportunities, while Cleveland failed to score on its lone trip. Turnovers played a key role, as the Browns committed 1 turnover compared to 2 by the Bengals, and Cleveland's defense and special teams accounted for 2 touchdowns. Time of possession heavily favored Cincinnati at 35 minutes and 34 seconds, but Cleveland's ability to capitalize on defensive plays ultimately outweighed the statistical advantage. Shedeur Sanders led the Cleveland Browns' passing attack, completing 11 of 22 passes for 111 yards, while averaging 5.0 yards per attempt. He did not throw a touchdown or an interception, but was under constant pressure, taking 6 sacks for 29 yards and finishing with a 64.8 passer rating. Cincinnati quarterback Joe Burrow had a much more productive night, completing 29 of 39 passes for 236 yards and 3 touchdowns, though he did throw 1 interception and was sacked twice for 14 yards. Cleveland found success on the ground with a committee approach, rushing for 118 yards on 24 carries. Dylan Sampson led the Browns with 32 yards on 10 carries, while Raheem Sanders added 26 yards on 5 attempts. Shedeur Sanders chipped in 26 yards on 3 carries, and Malachi Corley, Travion Williams, Jerry Jeudy, and Isaiah Bond all contributed smaller gains as the Browns averaged 4.9 yards per rush. Cincinnati's rushing attack was slightly more effective, totaling 142 yards on 25 carries. Chase Brown paced the Bengals with 72 yards on 13 attempts, followed by Samaje Perine with 42 yards, while Burrow added 17 yards on 2 carries. In the receiving game, Cleveland's passing offense was limited, with Cedric Tillman leading the Browns with 23 yards on a single reception. Malachi Corley and Jerry Jeudy each caught 2 passes for 20 and 17 yards respectively, as Cleveland totaled 111 receiving yards on 11 catches. Cincinnati's passing game was far more dynamic, led by Jamar Chase, who caught 8 passes for 96 yards and a touchdown. T. Higgins added 6 catches for 67 yards and a score, while Chase Brown also found the end zone through the air. The Bengals finished with 236 receiving yards on 29 receptions. Turnovers played a key role for both teams. Cleveland lost a fumble by Sanders but recovered one of Cincinnati's miscues, while the Bengals lost a fumble by Noah Fant but also recovered a Browns fumble. Despite moving the ball effectively through the air and on the ground, Cincinnati was unable to fully capitalize on its offensive production, settling for 18 points in the loss. Cincinnati moved the offense well behind Joe Burrow, but turnovers, stalled red zone possessions, and situational failures proved costly. A critical interception, a lost fumble, and several drives that ended without touchdowns limited their scoring output. In addition, while Burrow threw 3 touchdown passes, the Bengals failed to maximize extra point and conversion opportunities, forcing them to leave points on the field. Cleveland's defense tightened up in key moments, especially after big gains, preventing Cincinnati from sustaining momentum when it mattered most. Looking at the box score, it's surprising that Cleveland came away with the win, but the Browns were able to do more with less. While Cincinnati controlled most of the statistical categories, total yards, first downs, and time of possession, it was the timely mistakes and key errors that swung the game. Cleveland capitalized on those opportunities, doing just enough to secure the victory and leave Cincinnati with an in-state loss to close out the 2025 NFL season. The New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons faced off in an NFC South divisional showdown that carried no direct playoff implications for either team. But the stakes were far from meaningless. In a quirky twist, an Atlanta win would have knocked the Tampa Bay Buccaneers out of the postseason, even though the Bucs had defeated the Carolina Panthers just days earlier. That unique scenario added an unusual layer of intrigue to what might have otherwise been a typical late-season divisional matchup, giving both teams a reason to compete with pride and for divisional bragging rights. On this Sunday, the Falcons played spoilers as they won the game 19-17, knocking the Buccaneers out of the playoffs. The New Orleans Saints controlled much of the game against the Atlanta Falcons, finishing with 16 first downs to Atlanta's 14, while holding clear advantages in yardage and efficiency. New Orleans ran 65 plays for 340 total yards, averaging 5.2 yards per play, compared to Atlanta's 208 yards on 61 plays at just 3.4 yards per snap. The Saints were more effective through the air, completing 23 of 35 passes for 232 yards, while the Falcons managed 159 passing yards on 18 of 32 passing. Both teams threw one interception and allowed 4 sacks, but New Orleans consistently moved the chains with better balance. On the ground, the Saints rushed for 108 yards on 26 carries, averaging 4.2 yards per attempt, while Atlanta struggled to establish the run, gaining just 49 yards on 25 carries at 2.0 yards per rush. The Saints also had the edge in critical situations, converting 3 of 3 fourth down attempts and 2 of 3 trips in the red zone, while the Falcons went just 1 for 3 in red zone opportunities. Turnovers were limited, though New Orleans committed 2 compared to Atlanta's 1. But time of possession favored the Saints at 31 minutes and 19 seconds. Despite the relatively close score, the statistics reflected a game largely dictated by New Orleans' ability to sustain drives and limit Atlanta's offensive effectiveness. Tyler Shuck led the New Orleans Saints offense with a steady performance through the air, completing 23 of 35 passes for 259 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Shuck averaged 7.4 yards per attempt but was under pressure throughout the game, taking 4 sacks for 27 yards and finishing with an 85.3 passer rating. For Atlanta, Kirk Cousins completed 18 of 32 passes for 180 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception, averaging 5.6 yards per attempt. Cousins was also sacked 4 times for 21 yards and posted a passer rating of 69.8, as the Falcons' passing attack struggled to find consistency. The Saints found more balance on the ground, rushing for 108 yards on 26 carries. Audric Estime led New Orleans with 63 yards on 21 attempts, while Shuck added a key 29-yard rushing touchdown on just 3 carries. Evan Hull contributed 11 yards on 2 attempts, helping the Saints average 4.2 yards per rush. Atlanta's running game was largely contained, as Bijan Robinson was limited to 33 yards on 15 carries, and Tyler Allgeier added 16 yards on 7 attempts. The Falcons managed just 49 rushing yards on 25 carries, averaging 2.0 yards per attempt. In the receiving game, New Orleans spread the ball effectively, with Juwan Johnson and Dante Pettis leading the way. Johnson caught 3 passes for 61 yards, while Pettis added 5 receptions for 60 yards. Estime contributed 5 catches for 43 yards out of the backfield, and Ronnie Bell hauled in the Saints' lone receiving touchdown on 2 catches for 23 yards. Atlanta's passing offense was paced by Drake London, who finished with 4 receptions for 78 yards and a touchdown, including a 37-yard catch. Kyle Pitts added 6 catches for 58 yards, while Darnell Mooney and Robinson chipped in smaller gains. Turnovers played a role, as New Orleans lost 2 fumbles, while Atlanta protected the ball in that area but was unable to capitalize enough offensively to overcome its struggles in both the run game and pass protection. Although the Falcons won't be playing in January, Carolina Panthers fans might owe them a small holiday thank you. By defeating the Saints, Atlanta played an unexpected role in clearing the path for Carolina's playoff berth, proving that even late-season games without direct stakes can have major ripple effects on the postseason. The late Christmas card and a nod of gratitude seem well earned. In an NFC North matchup at US Bank Stadium in Minneapolis, the Green Bay Packers faced the Minnesota Vikings while resting several key starters, including their usual starting quarterback, Jordan Love. In his place, Clayton Tune took the reins under center for the Packers, giving the team an opportunity to manage player workload while still competing in a divisional contest. But in Sunday's matchup, it was not competitive, as Green Bay struggled to move the ball effectively, losing the game 16-3 to the Vikings. The Packers were only able to total 121 yards on 50 plays, with only 12 first downs, 1 through the air, 10 on the ground, and 1 via penalty. Their passing attack was nearly non-existent, going 6 of 11 for -7 yards and losing 41 yards on 4 sacks, while the rushing game produced 128 yards on 35 carries, averaging 3.7 yards per attempt. Green Bay managed only 1 red zone trip, coming away empty-handed, and turned the ball over once on a lost fumble, holding possession for 26 minutes and 30 seconds. In contrast, the Minnesota Vikings moved the ball efficiently, racking up 363 total yards on 64 plays, with 23 first downs, 14 passing, and 8 rushing. Their aerial attack, led by J.J. McCarthy and Max Brosmer, accounted for 226 yards on 21 completions from 31 attempts, while the running game added 137 yards on 31 carries, averaging 4.4 yards per rush. The Vikings converted 1 fourth down and went 1 of 4 in the red zone, holding the ball for 33 minutes and 30 seconds. Vikings quarterback J.J. McCarthy started the game but was forced to leave early due to injury. Backup Max Brosmer stepped in, completing 7 of 8 passes for 57 yards, helping Minnesota maintain momentum despite the sudden change under center. McCarthy had completed 14 of 23 passes for 182 yards before exiting, averaging 7.7 yards per attempt, and did not throw a touchdown or interception for a passer rating of 85.8, while backup Max Brosmer added 7 completions on 8 attempts for 57 yards and no turnovers, though he took 2 sacks for 13 yards lost and posted a passer rating of 96.4. Overall, Minnesota's combined passing effort totaled 226 yards with solid efficiency despite the quarterback change, giving the team a 90.7 combined passer rating. Minnesota leaned on a balanced rushing attack led by Jordan Mason, who totaled 94 yards on 14 carries, and Ty Chandler, who added 23 yards. Justin Jefferson paced the receiving corps with 8 catches for 101 yards, with Jalen Naylor adding 49 yards on 3 receptions. For the Packers, Clayton Tune struggled in the face of pressure, finishing 6 of 11 for just 34 yards and losing 41 yards on 4 sacks, while Chris Brooks led the rushing attack with 61 yards. Minnesota's effective ground game and consistent connection to Jefferson allowed them to control the tempo, even with the disruption at quarterback, ultimately giving them the edge in total yardage and offensive production. While the Packers treated this game as a throwaway, with little riding on the outcome, the Vikings played with pride, and the victory over their longtime rivals, the Packers, was a statement. It reinforced that Minnesota is in win-now mode, putting a spotlight on the performance of J.J. McCarthy and raising questions about his development and role heading into the 2026 season. The win was more than just a morale boost. It was a signal that the Vikings are serious contenders and that McCarthy's progression will be a key storyline in the offseason. In a matchup between the Tennessee Titans and Jacksonville Jaguars in Duval County, the Jaguars dominated the first down battle, gaining 24 compared to the Titans' 10, largely thanks to their passing game. Jacksonville's aerial attack was highly efficient, completing 24 of 32 attempts for 255 yards and no turnovers, while the Titans managed 117 passing yards on 20 of 33 attempts and threw 1 interception. On the ground, Tennessee led slightly with 77 rushing yards on 19 carries, compared to Jacksonville's 64 yards on 24 attempts. The Jaguars converted all 3 of their red zone opportunities into touchdowns, while Tennessee managed just 1 of 1. Jacksonville also benefited from a defensive or special teams touchdown, which helped swing momentum in their favor. Time of possession favored the Jaguars, who controlled the ball for 33 minutes compared to Tennessee's 27, allowing them to dictate the pace and secure the victory. Brandon Allen and Cam Ward shared quarterback duties for the Tennessee Titans, combining for a total of 117 passing yards without any touchdowns and 1 interception, with Allen taking most of the snaps due to Ward leaving the game with what was diagnosed as a shoulder injury. Trevor Lawrence led the Jacksonville Jaguars offense, completing 24 of 32 passes for 255 yards and 3 touchdowns, while Nick Mullins added a short, efficient 2-for-2 performance to help keep the offense moving. On the ground, Tony Pollard led the Titans with 77 rushing yards and 1 touchdown, while Cam Ward added a short rushing score, giving Tennessee a balanced attack despite limited production. Jacksonville relied on Travis Etienne Jr. and the receiving corps, including Parker Washington and Brenton Strange, to move the chains, with Etienne contributing 64 yards on the ground and the receivers combining for over 270 yards and 3 touchdowns. The Jaguars' offensive efficiency and ability to capitalize in the passing game helped them control the contest, leaving the Titans to rely on short bursts and a limited passing attack. The Titans, despite being out of playoff contention, showed noticeable growth since their bye week, with rookie quarterback Cam Ward and other key players demonstrating improvement and building a foundation for next season. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, this game was crucial in securing the AFC South title and keeping control of their playoff destiny. By earning the win, the Jaguars not only reinforced their position atop the division, but also ensured they maintained momentum and confidence heading into the postseason, regardless of other results around the league. America's team, the Dallas Cowboys, travel from Jerry's World to East Rutherford, New Jersey, to take on their NFC East rival, the New York Giants. While the game carried no playoff implications, both teams played with intensity, as divisional bragging rights were on the line. The Cowboys and Giants each showcased balanced offensive attacks, with Dallas mixing the run and pass, and New York leaning more heavily on their passing game. Despite the stakes being purely pride-based, the Giants were able to control the clock and sustain drives more effectively, while the Cowboys made key plays but struggled to capitalize in critical situations. Ultimately, the matchup highlighted the competitiveness of the NFC East and offered fans a glimpse at both teams' depth and potential heading into the offseason. The New York Giants emerged victorious, pulling away to claim a 34-17 win over the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants' balanced attack and sustained drives proved too much for Dallas, allowing New York to control the pace of the game and secure a decisive divisional triumph. The Cowboys and Giants both moved the ball effectively, though in different ways. The Cowboys recorded 18 first downs, with 8 coming through the air and 9 on the ground, while the Giants managed 25 first downs, 14 by passing, and 8 by rushing. Penalties contributed to additional first downs, with Dallas gaining 1 and New York 3. On third downs, the Cowboys converted 2 of 8 opportunities, while the Giants were more efficient, converting 8 of 14. The Cowboys managed 1 of 2 fourth down attempts, and the Giants did not attempt any fourth downs. Dallas ran 54 plays for a total of 286 yards, averaging just over 5 yards per play, while New York ran 69 plays for 380 yards, averaging slightly more than 5 yards per play. Passing yards were evenly split for Dallas at 143 yards, and more prolific for the Giants at 219 yards. Dallas completed 14 of 24 pass attempts with 1 interception, whereas New York completed 22 of 33 without turning the ball over through the air, although they lost yards due to 4 sacks. Both teams had balanced rushing attacks, with Dallas gaining 143 yards on 30 carries, and New York 161 yards on 32 attempts. Red zone efficiency saw Dallas scoring 2 of 4 times, and New York scoring 2 of 5. Penalties were a factor for both teams, with Dallas flagged 9 times for 94 yards, and New York 7 times for 63 yards. Turnovers were also present, with Dallas losing 2 and the Giants losing 1. Time of possession favored New York, who controlled the ball for 33 minutes and 7 seconds, compared to Dallas with 26 minutes and 53 seconds. Overall, the game highlighted the Giants' ability to move the ball consistently and maintain control, while the Cowboys relied on balanced offensive contributions but struggled to capitalize on key opportunities. Further, in a matchup between the New York Giants and Dallas Cowboys, the passing game saw contributions from both teams' quarterbacks. For the Giants, Joe Milton III completed 7 of 13 passes for 73 yards with 1 interception, while Dak Prescott finished 7 of 11 for 70 yards, keeping the Cowboys moving but unable to find the end zone through the air. For Dallas, Jackson Dart led the offense, completing 22 of 32 passes for 230 yards and 2 touchdowns, though he was sacked 4 times for 11 yards lost. On the ground, the Cowboys' rushing attack totaled 161 yards, with Tyrone Tracy Jr. contributing 103 yards on 18 carries, and Devin Singletary adding 26 yards and a touchdown, while the Giants managed 143 rushing yards, with Jadon Blue leading the way with 64 yards and a touchdown. In the receiving game, the Cowboys' attack was led by Ryan Flournoy, who had 5 catches for 68 yards, while CeeDee Lamb added 9 yards on a single reception. The Giants leaned on Gunnar Olszewski, who caught 8 passes for 102 yards, and Tyrone Tracy Jr., who added 8 catches for 56 yards and a touchdown. Overall, the Cowboys balanced their offense effectively between the run and pass, while the Giants struggled to find consistency despite Milton's 143 passing yards and contributions from their rushing attack. The Arizona Cardinals flew into Los Angeles to face their NFC West divisional rival, the Los Angeles Rams, in a game that carried little significance for playoff seeding. The Cardinals had long since been eliminated from postseason contention, while the Rams had already secured a playoff berth, ensuring they would have a seat at the table for the big dance, even if the division title was out of reach. As expected, the Rams outperformed the Cardinals across nearly every phase, including the scoreboard, turning a low-stakes game into a clear demonstration of depth and execution, winning 37-20. The Rams recorded 25 first downs to Arizona's 17, including 9 rushing first downs compared to the Cardinals, 4, while their superior third down efficiency, 9 of 16 versus 4 of 11, helped sustain drives and control the tempo. Los Angeles ran 72 plays for 395 total yards, averaging 5.5 yards per play, while Arizona managed 317 yards on just 53 plays, though they were slightly more explosive per play at 6.0 yards. Both teams relied heavily on the pass, with the Cardinals completing 23 of 32 attempts for 238 yards, but throwing 1 interception, while the Rams went 25 of 40 for 252 yards and avoided turnovers entirely. The ground game favored Los Angeles as well, totaling 143 yards on 31 carries compared to Arizona's 79 yards on 15 attempts. Red zone efficiency remained limited, with the Rams converting 2 of 4 attempts and the Cardinals 1 of 3. And penalties and sacks had a modest impact on both sides. Time of possession tilted toward the Rams, 32 minutes and 11 seconds to 27 minutes and 49 seconds, allowing them to dictate the pace. While the game had no playoff implications, the Rams' balance, ball security, and ability to sustain drives highlighted why they had already secured a postseason berth, while the Cardinals used the contest to evaluate talent despite the season being long over in regards to meaningful football. In the passing game, Arizona's Jacoby Brissett completed 23 of 32 passes for 238 yards, throwing 2 touchdowns and 1 interception, while being sacked 6 times for 33 yards, finishing with a 105.1 passer rating. Punter Matt Hack got involved, contributing a single 28-yard completion on his lone attempt. For the Rams, Matthew Stafford led a balanced and efficient attack, completing 25 of 40 passes for 252 yards, with 4 touchdowns, no interceptions, and only 1 sack for 7 yards, posting a 114.5 passer rating. On the ground, the Cardinals had a modest rushing attack, totaling 79 yards on 15 carries, led by Emari Demercado's 29 yards and Jacoby Brissett's 19, while Michael Carter and Corey Kishner contributed smaller gains. The Rams, however, leaned more heavily on their run game, amassing 143 yards on 31 carries, paced by Kyren Williams with 60 yards, Blake Corum with 59, and Puka Nacua chipping in 24. In the receiving game, the Cardinals spread the ball effectively, with Michael Wilson catching 5 passes for 99 yards and a touchdown, Trey McBride adding 65 yards, and contributions from multiple other targets totaling 271 yards and 2 scores. Los Angeles leaned on Tyler Higbee's 91 yards and 1 touchdown, Puka Nacua with 76 yards and a score, and Colby Parkinson adding 36 yards with 2 touchdowns, giving the Rams 259 receiving yards and 4 touchdowns overall. The stat lines reflect a game in which the Rams' efficiency and explosive passing attack outpaced Arizona's more balanced but less productive offensive efforts. For Cardinals fans, the end of the season signals another long and uncertain offseason, with lingering questions about whether ownership will take meaningful steps to address the team's needs, or if 2026 will unfold like so many seasons before. Full of hope, but ultimately another disappointment in waiting. Meanwhile, the Rams can shift their focus to the playoffs, preparing for their matchup next weekend with hopes of continuing a deep postseason run and potentially another Super Bowl appearance. Even for Los Angeles, however, the offseason questions loom large, as they must evaluate how to build on their strengths, address weaknesses, and ensure that the team doesn't fall short when it matters most. The contrast between the two franchises is stark, one looking for answers to simply be competitive, the other balancing championship aspirations with the need for long-term planning. The Kansas City Chiefs traveled to Las Vegas to face the Raiders in a game that carried little significance beyond pride, as neither team had postseason stakes attached, and interest remained largely within their respective fan bases. With several regulars sidelined, both teams relied on depth players and conservative game plans, leading to a sluggish, defense-heavy contest. The Raiders took care of business at home with a 14-12 win, and the statistics clearly explain why the game felt more like a high-scoring baseball matchup than the high-flying NFL contests fans have grown accustomed to. Both offenses struggled to sustain drives, as Kansas City finished with just 10 first downs compared to Las Vegas, 12, while third down efficiency was poor on both sides, combining to go 7 for 33. Yardage was limited throughout the game, with the Chiefs managing only 168 total yards on 62 plays, 2.7 yards per play, and the Raiders posting 204 yards on 61 plays, 3.3 per play. Passing production was minimal, as the teams combined for just 170 passing yards, with neither offense throwing a touchdown pass and Las Vegas capitalizing on Kansas City's lone interception. The running game was equally modest, though the Raiders held a slight edge with 118 rushing yards on 32 carries compared to the Chiefs' 84 yards on 23 attempts. Red zone opportunities were rare and unproductive, with both teams going 0 for 2, while penalties, sacks, and turnovers further stalled momentum. In the end, ball control, marginal efficiency, and fewer self-inflicted mistakes allowed the Raiders to grind out a narrow victory in a game defined by defense, field position, and attrition, rather than explosiveness and flash. Kansas City rotated quarterbacks Shane Buechele and Chris Oladokun, who combined to complete 18 of 31 passes for 84 yards, no touchdowns, and no interceptions, though constant pressure resulted in 8 sacks for 62 yards lost. Big Storo. The Raiders countered with Aiden O'Connell and a brief appearance from Kenny Pickett, totaling 86 passing yards on 11 completions, but throwing the game's lone interception. On the ground, Las Vegas found more consistency, rushing for 118 yards behind Ashton Genty's 26 carries, while Kansas City managed 84 rushing yards led by Brashard Smith. The Chiefs generated more explosive plays in the passing game, highlighted by Hollywood Brown's 64-yard reception, finishing with 146 receiving yards compared to the Raiders' 105. Ultimately, the game reflected its low-stakes nature, methodical, cautious, and lacking offensive rhythm, serving more as an evaluation opportunity for depth players than a statement performance for either franchise. While the Raiders have become a running joke in recent years, the Chiefs have been a model of consistency, defined by winning seasons and meaningful, high-stakes football. On this Sunday, however, Kansas City got a taste of the kind of frustrating, grinded-out experience the Raiders and their fan base have grown accustomed to. The Chiefs struggled to generate offense, failed to capitalize on limited opportunities, and were dragged into a low-scoring, mistake-filled game where efficiency mattered more than talent or reputation. Las Vegas, comfortable in that style of football, leaned into it and emerged with the win, flipping the script, if only for a day, and reminding Kansas City how thin the margin can be when execution falters and explosiveness disappears. That's about all that can be said for this matchup between two franchises with little at stake. For Las Vegas, the win mattered mostly for pride and the potential implications for draft positioning, while Kansas City treated it as an opportunity to get an early evaluation on what they have and exactly what is needed going forward. The end result was a low-key, uneventful contest that reflected the circumstances, a game played for nothing more than finishing the season and shaping the offseason, rather than showcasing the kind of high-stakes football these teams had been capable of. In a Week 18 NFC showdown, the Washington Commanders faced off against the Philadelphia Eagles at Lincoln Financial Field in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in a game that showcased contrasting offensive approaches. Washington controlled the clock with 63 plays compared to Philadelphia's 62, and dominated possession at 34 minutes and 9 seconds. The Commanders leaned heavily on the run, rushing 41 times for 143 yards, while Josh Johnson managed the passing attack, completing 14 of 22 attempts for 131 yards with a touchdown and an interception. Chris Rodriguez Jr. led the ground game with 65 yards, and Terry McLaurin topped the receiving corps with 57 yards. The Eagles, meanwhile, relied more on their passing game, as Tanner McKee completed 21 of 40 attempts for 227 yards, a touchdown, and an interception, though he was sacked 3 times for 14 yards lost. Philadelphia ran the ball just 19 times for 80 yards, with Tank Bigsby accounting for 75 yards and a touchdown. Devontae Smith led the receiving group with 52 yards, while Jahan Dotson and Darius Cooper contributed 40 and 33 yards respectively. Despite being outrushed and outcontrolled on the ground, the Eagles were able to generate yards per play at a higher rate, 5.0 to Washington's 4.3. Both teams had their miscues, combining for 3 turnovers. But Washington's ability to convert in the red zone, 3 of 4, gave them an edge over Philadelphia's 2 of 3 performance. The game was a battle of time management and efficiency. highlighting Washington's balanced attack against Philadelphia's aerial-focused strategy. While Washington's victory carried no playoff implications, it offered a glimpse into the team's early evaluations for 2026 and raised questions about a squad that is just a year removed from an NFC Championship appearance. The win gave the Commanders some momentum and insight into areas needing improvement heading into the offseason. For the Eagles, the game served as an opportunity to rest key players, including Jalen Hurts, giving them a chance to regroup after a season of inconsistencies. That rest could prove invaluable as Philadelphia prepares to face a battered San Francisco 49ers team on Sunday evening in Philadelphia, with the winner moving one step closer to this year's Super Bowl. The Miami Dolphins traveled to Foxborough to face their AFC East rival, the New England Patriots, in a game that underscored a season of unmet expectations for Miami. Entering the matchup, the Dolphins had long since been eliminated from playoff contention, and their hopes of building momentum were already slim. The Patriots, meanwhile, continued their strong run, dominating nearly every facet of the game on the way to a 38-10 victory. Miami managed just 13 first downs compared to New England's 22, and struggled both in the passing and rushing game, totaling only 180 yards on 54 plays, 3.3 yards per play, while the Patriots amassed 457 yards on 56 plays, averaging 8.2 yards per attempt. Rookie quarterback Quinn Ewers completed 16 of 23 passes for 137 yards with a touchdown and an interception, while backup Zach Wilson was ineffective in limited action. Miami's receiving attack featured Theo Weiss Jr. with 44 yards, Greg Dulcich with 31, and Tajay Washington with 26, while Malik Washington caught a short touchdown pass. On the ground, the Dolphins managed only 63 yards on 25 carries, with Jalen Wright and Malik Washington contributing 23 and 22 yards respectively. New England, on the other hand, executed efficiently, both in the air and on the ground. Drake May and Joshua Dobbs combined to complete 17 of 22 passes for 214 yards and a touchdown without turnovers. Hunter Henry, 56 yards. Stephon Diggs, 43 yards, and Efton Chisholm, 35 yards, paced the receiving corps, while Ramondre Stevenson contributed both in the passing game and on the ground, rushing for 131 yards and 2 touchdowns. Trevayon Henderson added 53 rushing yards and 2 scores, as the Patriots totaled 243 rushing yards on 34 carries. The imbalance was clear. New England's offensive balance and explosiveness overwhelmed Miami's struggling attack, while the Dolphins' 2 turnovers and limited red zone efficiency, 1 of 3 trips converted, only widened the gap. This game also marked a notable milestone in the AFC East, as for the first time this decade, the division was won by a team other than Buffalo. For the Patriots, 2025's East title was a testament to consistency and execution, while for Dolphins fans, the loss raises urgent questions about the quarterback position, coaching leadership under Mike McDaniels, and what changes are necessary in the offseason to avoid another year of frustration. Miami's struggles on both sides of the ball served as a stark reminder of the work ahead, as the Patriots celebrated a dominant performance that secured both the divisional crown and momentum heading into the postseason. In an NFC North matchup, the Detroit Lions traveled to Chicago to take on the Chicago Bears in Soldier Field in a game that showcased strong performances on both sides but no clear domination. This was a thrilling NFC North matchup, and while the Lions were eliminated from the playoffs, they still wanted to take down their divisional foe. On this Sunday, the Lions edged the Bears 19-16 in a game that was much closer than the box score suggested. That is, Detroit seemed to be in control of every aspect, but it was only a 3-point game. Detroit was on top in nearly every category and by a wide margin in a few. So exactly how was the game so tight? Detroit amassed 433 total yards to Chicago's 270, including 311 passing yards from Jared Goff and 82 rushing yards from Jahmyr Gibbs. Amon-Ra St. Brown led the Lions in the receiving game with 11 catches for 139 yards, while Jameson Williams and Khalif Raymond added significant contributions. The Bears, Caleb Williams threw for 205 yards and a touchdown, connecting with Colston Loveland for 91 yards and a score, and Luther Burden III added 35 receiving yards. Despite Detroit building a 16-point lead heading into the fourth quarter, Chicago mounted a late surge and tied the game on a gutsy performance. But the Lions were victorious on a late second field goal. While the Lions controlled possession and outgained the Bears in most statistical categories, turnovers and red zone struggles kept the game close, ultimately forcing Detroit to hold on late to secure the win. Detroit's Jared Goff completed 27 of 42 passes for 311 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception, while Caleb Williams led Chicago by completing 20 of 33 passes for 205 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Detroit's rushing attack was led by Jahmyr Gibbs, who ran for 80 yards on 19 carries, while the Bears' David Montgomery added 65 yards on 18 attempts. Detroit spread the ball effectively in the passing game, with Amon-Ra St. Brown hauling in 11 receptions for 139 yards, Jamison Williams catching 6 passes for 74 yards, and Khalif Raymond adding 3 receptions for 52 yards. Chicago's receiving corps was led by Colston Loveland with 10 catches for 91 yards and a touchdown, Jahdae Walker with 2 catches for 36 yards and a score, and Luther Burden III with 3 receptions for 35 yards. Detroit earned 26 first downs to Chicago's 16, with 17 passing and 7 rushing first downs compared to the Bears, 10 passing and 4 rushing. Third down efficiency favored the Lions slightly, converting 6 of 13 compared to Chicago's 4 of 11, while Chicago managed their single red zone opportunity for a score, and Detroit came up short on 1 attempt. Detroit lost 20 yards on 3 sacks, while Chicago lost 7 on 1 sack. Both teams committed similar penalties, with Detroit flagged 6 times for 35 yards and Chicago 4 times for 25. The Lions controlled possession for 35 minutes and 45 seconds, keeping Chicago's time of possession to 24-15, but turnovers were even at 1 each, with no defensive or special team scores. While Detroit moved the ball effectively, Chicago relied on efficiency in key moments to keep the game competitive, with standout efforts from both quarterbacks and skill position players shaping the contest. This game illustrates that you can control every aspect of the game, even the scoreboard, for 3 quarters, but you must finish 4 quarters of football. The Lions did prevail, and they are a gutsy team, but it got a bit too close for their liking in the 4th quarter. But this has been the resume for the Bears in 2025. Stay close, keep chipping away, and do your best Fred Sanford imitation, as the Bears have been cardiac Bears in 2025. The Los Angeles Chargers headed to Mile High Stadium to take on their AFC West divisional rival, the Denver Broncos, in a matchup that carried significance beyond the standings simply because it was a divisional game. While divisional pride was on the line for both teams, the stakes differed greatly. The Broncos entered the contest playing for the number 1 seed in the AFC, giving them every reason to approach the game at full strength. The Chargers, meanwhile, were already eliminated from winning the division and chose a different strategy, resting several key starters, including franchise quarterback Justin Herbert, as they looked ahead rather than risking injury in a game that would not impact their divisional outcome. The outcome at Mile High Stadium reflected 2 playoff-bound teams approaching the game with very different priorities. Denver controlled the flow of the game from start to finish, using efficiency, discipline, and field position to keep command throughout the afternoon. The Broncos did not light up the scoreboard, but they limited mistakes, protected the football, and capitalized on a defensive/special teams touchdown to create separation. Los Angeles, already locked into a playoff spot and unable to win the division, rested several starters, including quarterback Justin Herbert, and never found consistent rhythm offensively with a scaled-back game plan. While the Chargers showed flashes, particularly in the running game, turnovers, poor red zone execution, and limited offensive explosiveness prevented them from mounting any sustained threat. In the end, the game served as a reminder of Denver's readiness for postseason football and their ability to win with control and efficiency, while Los Angeles exited healthy and focused on the bigger picture, knowing both teams would soon shift their attention to the playoffs. The statistics show a game that was closer on paper than it was in reality. Both teams finished with 13 first downs and ran 12 total drives, but Denver was more efficient, gaining 240 total yards on just 58 plays, 4.1 yards per play, compared to Los Angeles, 217 yards on 69 plays, 3.1 per play. The Chargers completed 20 of 44 passes for 104 yards, averaging only 2.2 yards per attempt, and threw 1 interception, while the Broncos were sharper through the air, completing 14 of 23 passes for 124 yards at 4.6 yards per attempt with no interceptions. On the ground, Los Angeles rushed for 113 yards on 21 carries, while Denver countered with 116 yards on 31 attempts, though the Chargers held a higher yards per rush average. Neither team found the end zone in the red zone, combining to go 0 for 5, but discipline and ball security separated the two. Los Angeles committed 5 penalties for 25 yards and turned the ball over twice, while Denver was flagged just once for 5 yards and did not commit a turnover. A defensive or special teams touchdown further tilted the game in the Broncos' favor, and Denver controlled the tempo with a 34 minutes and 1 second to 25 minutes and 59 seconds edge in time of possession. Nix led the Broncos' passing attack with a clean performance, completing 14 of 23 passes for 141 yards and averaging 6.1 yards per attempt, with no touchdowns or interceptions, while taking 4 sacks for 17 yards lost and finishing with a 78.4 passer rating. The Chargers, resting Justin Herbert, started Trey Lance, who completed 20 of 44 passes for 136 yards, averaging just 3.1 yards per attempt, with no touchdowns and 1 interception, while being sacked 4 times for 32 yards and posting a 43.4 passer rating. On the ground, Denver leaned on a committee approach, totaling 116 rushing yards on 31 carries, led by Nix's 8 carries for 49 yards and Jaleel McLaughlin's 41 yards on 6 attempts. Los Angeles finished with 113 rushing yards on 21 carries, paced by Lance's 9 carries for 69 yards, and support from Jarrett Patterson and Kamani Vidal. In the receiving game, the Chargers were led by Keenan Allen's 7 catches for 36 yards, while the Broncos generated more explosive plays through Evan Engram, who had 45 yards on just 3 receptions, as Denver finished with 141 receiving yards on 14 catches, compared to Los Angeles, 136 yards on 20 receptions. Although the numbers show similar first downs and yardage, the Broncos' control of momentum, field position, and overall pace made the contest one-sided, reflecting Denver's dominance far more than the box score suggests. The final score of Denver 19, Los Angeles 3, illustrates this fact perfectly. In an AFC East matchup with no playoff implications, the Buffalo Bills host the New York Jets. For the Bills, this was an opportunity to rest starters, while giving younger players and backups a chance to gain experience. Mitchell Trubisky led the offense efficiently, completing 22 of 29 passes for 259 yards and 4 touchdowns, with no interceptions. The Bills' rushing attack was also productive, with Ray Davis gaining over 150 yards, Ty Johnson adding 36, James Cook 3 contributing 15, and Trubisky chipping in 5 yards, combining for more than 211 rushing yards on 43 attempts at nearly 5 yards per carry. In the passing game, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, Gabe Davis, Kaleki Latu, Dawson Knox, Ray Davis, Reggie Gilliam, Ty Johnson, Joshua Palmer, and Jackson Hawes combined for 22 receptions, 259 yards, and 4 touchdowns, with long gains of 37 yards through the air. Buffalo dominated the box score with 30 first downs, 30 total drives, 4 red zone touchdowns on 6 attempts, and controlled possession for over 38 minutes, finishing with a total of 470 yards and averaging nearly 6.5 yards per play. For the Jets, Brady Cook completed 11 of 22 passes for 53 yards and 1 touchdown, while their ground game produced 69 yards on 23 attempts, led by Khalil Herbert with 42 yards, Keenan Nwangwu with 18, Brady Cook with 7, and Arian Smith with 2. In the receiving game, Isaiah Williams, John Mechie 3, Quentin Skinner, Khalil Herbert, Andrew Beck, Kene Nwangwu, Arian Smith, and Adonai Mitchell combined for 11 receptions, 60 yards, and 1 touchdown. The Jets managed 9 first downs, only 3 on the ground, and had a slightly better third down conversion than the Bills in terms of attempts, but were otherwise dominated in total yardage, red zone efficiency, and possession, holding the ball just over 21 minutes and gaining only 122 total yards at under 3 yards per play. Overall, Buffalo's performance highlighted the depth of their roster and provided a meaningful evaluation for the coaching staff ahead of the playoffs. And just like that, we close the chapter on the 2025 NFL regular season. We've been with you through all 18 weeks, week in and week out, on Diggin' Deeper into the NFL. And we can't thank you enough for joining us on this journey through every matchup, story, and headline. But just because the regular season is over doesn't mean our time together ends here. Far from it. The playoffs are next. The Super Bowl looms on the horizon. The draft will bring excitement and speculation. And the off-season promises stories of trades, signings, and coaching moves. In other words, our work has only just begun. The fun, the analysis, the faith-filled perspective, we're just getting started. So stick with us as we continue to go digging deeper, because the NFL never truly stops. and neither do we. What a ride it's been. Through the last 18 weeks, we've seen history, drama, and everything in between. The Jets made headlines as the first team in NFL history to finish a season without a single interception, a feat that was previously unimaginable, and a reminder that the NFL always finds ways to surprise us. The 2025 NFL season was a roller coaster from start to finish, filled with unforgettable highs, shocking lows, and moments that will be talked about for years to come. We witnessed historic achievements, like the Jets becoming the first team in NFL history to finish a season without throwing a single interception, a feat that left fans and analysts alike scratching their heads. Quarterbacks lit up scoreboards and dazzled with pinpoint precision. Running backs powered through defenses with relentless determination, and receivers made jaw-dropping catches that shifted momentum in the blink of an eye. Surprise teams emerged, challenging expectations and reminding everyone that no preseason prediction is guaranteed, while perennial powerhouses demonstrated why consistency and coaching excellence remain invaluable. Week after week, dramatic finishes, late-game heroics, and divisional showdowns kept fans on the edge of their seats. From high-flying offensive showcases to grinded-out defensive battles, the season offered a little bit of everything: nail-biting suspense, strategic masterclasses, and flashes of pure athletic brilliance. There were also fun tidbits sprinkled throughout, from breakout rookie performances to unexpected statistical quirks, giving fans stories to follow well beyond the final whistle. Ultimately, the 2025 season was a testament to the unpredictable magic of the NFL. It reminded us why we love this game, not just for the championships or the highlight reels, but for the drama, the passion, and the human stories that unfold each Sunday. As the playoffs loom and teams gear up for the next chapter, fans can look back on this season with awe, anticipation, and a renewed excitement for what comes next. From all of us here at Diggin, deeper into the NFL, thank you for joining the broadcast this season. I'm Brian Parsons, wishing you the best as we head into the playoffs. Stay safe, enjoy the games ahead, and may God bless you and your love for the game.